Welcome to Relationship Equity, a podcast that explores how successful people cultivate meaningful connections with others in their personal and professional lives. Learn from the stories, insights, and advice of leaders, innovators, and influencers who have built strong bonds with their teams, their customers, their communities, and their families. Here's Richard Walker.
I'm back with my old friend and fellow podcast host, Craig Pratt, otherwise known as CP, who's living the dream every day in every way. For over 25 years, CP has worked with and led incredible groups of people at some of the world's largest enterprise software and SaaS organizations. CP, we both have blue-collar backgrounds, and we both know why it's important to make a difference in other people's lives in our community. I feel like it's my duty to give back in some way, shape, or form based on the people that have helped me. Now, what about those people that didn't grow up that way, the people that are not natural networkers? You know, we work in the technology community, brilliant technology minds, a lot of people that we work with, and they don't have those natural networking skills, the ability to develop. I'll tell you a funny quick story, CP, you'll like this. So I sat with a new CIO. I was at a Caribou with a one-off Plymouth there and on 55, and this fella went past and he had his really nice suit on, young guy, probably in mid-20s, late 20s, or have you. And I complimented him on his suit, and we had a quick chat. And this new CIO that I just met, literally hadn't said, I just said hello, so just sat down with him. This fella walked off and he asked to meet with me. And I said, well, how can I help you? He said, I want to learn how to do that. I said, do what? Just strike up a conversation with a complete stranger. To him, it was, and this guy's a brilliant technologist, but that concept was so foreign to him. So what's your advice to people that are not like you and I, who would just naturally migrate to people and just genuinely like people and are intrigued by people that are much more introverts? What's your advice to them? Can they change that? Can they build their network of people that they want to build it with? Can they be intentional about it? Or is it just what it is?
You know, I think Keith Ferrazzi posted today his book. I think it's 20 years old today. And the book's title is Never Eat Alone. And he talks about his journey as a caddy, kind of a similar journey probably to you and I, navigating with people and through people to get to where we got to in life. And by the way, that's what it's all about. And so your point with that individual, you started with, how can I help you? And I think that's how you have to start life, is how can you help the person in front of you, to the right of you, to the left of you? Because if we do that and we don't think about helping ourselves, you're not networking. You're not, you're just there to help, make a difference. What can I contribute? Who do I know that could be part of this to help you on your journey? That's all I think about. And I don't know if it's natural or unnatural. Listen, like I said earlier, I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, lawyer, and accountant. So God gives us all something. I think he just gave me an interest in people.
It's as simple as that. But again, I go back to, because I believe that people that don't have those natural skills can build them. And so how do they build? Where do they start? It's kind of like my question of, how do you start a mission? How do you start? If you're the kind of person that would rather be, tippy-tip-tapping on your laptop and looking at the screen, and I've been accused of being my retired business partner. He calls me the randomizer, because I'll go into any bar, and before you know it, I'm singing and I've got a dozen people around me and telling stories and having a good laugh and whatever. Most people are not like that. I can't do what these technologists do. They've got brilliant technology minds. Could I be a software engineer? No, I'd die. My family wouldn't be able to eat. I don't have those skills. But I argue that people that don't have the natural relationship building skills can improve them. Will they ever be a CP? No. But can they improve them to the point of where it will help them with their lives and with their careers? Let's face it, if you look at the top technologists, they're not the top because of the technical capabilities. They're the top because they've got very good in communication and interpersonal and business savvy skills that have been learned. Yes, they may well have that natural element of skill set that a lot of others don't have, But I would argue that they have been learned, and we both know top technologists, and they've got very good interpersonal skills. It's the EQ versus IQ conversation. Can people improve their EQ skills? Yes or no?
Absolutely, they can. Absolutely, they can. Well, they got to commit to it, right? So they have to.
Yep.
They have to study those who they believe have great EQ skills. And listen, you and I have careers where we had to pick the phone up. Some people who have careers where the calls only come in. And
right.
The first thing I would encourage everybody to do is learn how to pick up the phone, because that in and of itself creates a different muscle. And I'll share this story about that. Chandler Withington.
Yep.
You know Chandler well, right? He did an incredible job for us at the Gala in 2021, 2 days after resigning from Hazeltine. Now, storied career in golf, he had a different, door that he wanted to go through in life for a lot of different reasons. But we talked about on his journey of putting together his collection of logos and having to call these clubs and navigate, getting the logo and the people and the politics and all that, right? And I said, Chandler, man, you're just used to people calling into that golf shop, aren't you? It's a different muscle. He goes, you have no idea. He says, I have such respect for people like you. And I think of all the times I was late on a call or didn't return a phone call or whatever, boy, do I look at the world differently. So again, pick up the phone and call Richard Walker, because I guarantee what Richard will do. He'll meet you at the Caribou on 55.
100%.
And coffee's on him. How can I help? And people have to want to commit to that.
Yeah, right. It's a mindset thing. You have to commit to it and be. But I would argue, start small. You don't have to, go to I'll tell you another quick funny story. Good friend of mine now, senior VP at a monstrous company within the Twin Cities, and he asked to. It's a longer story. I'll cut it short. He asked to meet with me because the only reason, because he was told by his executive coaches he needed to build his network, and he didn't know anybody outside of. He's been at the company for 20 years. He didn't know anybody outside of the four walls of where he worked. So I brought him to an event. It was at the OTCF, and there were 200 people in the audience. I was the facilitator for this executive panel. He came and he waited for me afterwards, and he said, Richard, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this. I said, that's wonderful. How many people did you meet? He said, well, 2. I said, that's great. But there were already people that I knew. So the point I'm making there is it can be intimidating to go to big events. So use LinkedIn. Reach out to somebody that has got a similar skill set to you, and ask if they'd be open to meet for a collaboration meeting to compare notes. Start small, because it's that confidence level. And but something you said is so important. Go into the meeting with the mindset of what can I do to help you? That's the first thought. Not what can you do to help me, but what can I do to help you? Here's what challenge I've got. But first and foremost, I'd like to understand what challenges you've got, because I'd like this to be a mutually beneficial relationship. What have you got on your plate right now that I can help you with?
Listen, I think people at their core are, want to help, right? Want to be part of something. They just don't know how sometimes, right? And it's about, bridging the gaps and building confidence. Park my sales career. If I just reached out to 9 out of 10 people on LinkedIn who I don't know, and I was very specific that there was something that they could help solve a problem or make a difference in somebody else's life, I think my batting average is pretty high, and not necessarily because of me, because I think people are sincerely interested in helping. And so if we don't poke at that, and test that and inspire that and, go gauge their interest, we'll never know. Right. And
I think you're right. And I think a lot of people don't recognize their own value in that they do have things to offer. And the biggest thing you can give to somebody is your time. And everybody has value. Everybody has skills. And that's the first thing to recognize, is you do have value. Okay, I've got kind of an off-the-wall question for you now. I'm going to throw at you. The best piece of advice you've ever been given. You retired. You were done a few years ago. And then you got bored and decided, well, I got some more to do here. And a friend of yours called you, said, come and run this for me, would you? And now you're in the security world trying to stop all these hackers destroying companies. And so after you're retired, I didn't even know you're coming back to the working world. And what the hell are you doing, CP? You go and play golf. But something drove you back in. That's a secondary thing. I did want to talk about that a little bit, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given in your career?
I'll tell you the one I learned too late from you most recently. were the 4 R's. I could use those probably a little bit earlier in my life. There's a few people who will attest.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because we were having coffee, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I talked about that concept. And I literally saw your facial expression change, like, holy shit, that's so simple. But if I'd only known that a few years ago. So let's talk about that a little bit, because, the 4 R's, it's sharing the right information with the right people at the right time in the right way. And it sounds so simple, right? It sounds so simple. Concept is so easy. Share the right information with the right people at the right time in the right way. Not just in business, but in life. But why don't most of us, including myself, why don't we follow that simple rule?
One of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou. I think I said her last name properly. She said, when we know better, we do better. And so I think about your 4 R's. And if somebody would have put that in front of me when I was 18 years old, and then maybe grabbed me by my shirt collar and said, repeat it back to me. And then repeat it back to me one more time so I know it sunk in. And tomorrow and next week, you're going to run into a 4-hour situation. It might be in the bag room. You're going to say the wrong thing to the wrong member at the wrong time on the wrong day. I go back to that early mentorship I call the anxiety decade, 14 to 24. And if we could impart more wisdom, on that next generation earlier, like your 4 R's, or like Maya Angelou's, when we know better, we do better. Just think how much further ahead we would be as a society, right? And I think that's the missing link.
It's interesting because we're lifelong students. The day you stop learning is the day you start having your boots up. And we started a program, our Link to Leadership program. It was our board of advisors that said this. There's just no good training for the technology world, because to be an individual contributor in any kind of technology role is one thing. And typically what happens is somebody will do really well in that role and they'll get promoted to being a manager. And we both know that to be successful in any kind of management leadership role, the skills to be successful are very different than being in a technology individual contributor role. And there's just no good training. So we created this program, 6 months long. The IT executives created this thing, and the current practitioners actually teach it. And it's a brilliant, brilliant program. And everything all the proceeds go back to Genesis Works, of course. But and John Bandy, my friend John Bandy, he was at Data Recognition Corporation, he said it perfectly. Because he has been part of this program. He helped create it many years ago. We started in 2010. We graduated well over 500 people through this program. He said, if only I had this training earlier in my career, I wouldn't have screwed up anywhere near as many things. So seek advice and seek training, not just early in your career, but at all points in your career, because we both know we all screw up every single day. We're dealing with people.
Yeah, I always say, toughest thing about companies are employees. And I'm an employee, so I know. I think back to your question again, best advice, probably from where I grew up in Walled Lake, an older gentleman said to me, Walt Jaskeline, and he said, be the person who buys around, doesn't stand around. It goes back to your point of walking into the bar, right? I'm walking in, I'm going to buy around, versus the guy or gal who's just standing around, right? Watching it happen. And I think
buy around, but walk away and don't let people know who bought that round.
Amen.
Yeah,
right? That's the invisible hand.
yes, if you, I learned this a long time ago. Don't do a good deed because you want recognition for it. Do a good deed because it's the right thing to do, and you feel good about doing a good deed because you're making a positive impact on somebody's life. And it doesn't have to be anything massive. It doesn't have to be the $4,000 you received. It could be just open the door for somebody as they're walking through. I can't tell you how many times I come up to a door and people just walk through it and they don't look behind them. It's just the way I was brought up. You always look behind you if you're opening a door to see if anybody else is walking through. Simple things, a smile, right?
Yeah, I think you can learn a lot from somebody when you ask them a simple question. How many things have you done for somebody that they'll never know it was you, or a person that you don't even know you've done something for?
Right. The pay it forward knock-on effect. It's such a powerful thing. Now I'm going to ask you another. So we have a scholarship fund for Genesis Works alumni to help them get through their college years. And in the early days of this, I would be on the panel interviewing people, and we couldn't give a scholarship to every single person who applied. Unfortunately, we just couldn't do that. But we gave scholarships to 5 or 6 people at a time, and I would be on the panel, and I'd ask the first question, and then I'd disappear. And I would always say, so I'm going to ask you the same question I would ask them. I would always say, I have a very, very difficult and important question for you. It's the first one, just to see how you respond. And then they kind of stiffen up and they're expecting a doozy. And I ask them, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be? And the responses are incredible because it's designed to disarm and make people feel comfortable and not get grilled. And I got to tell you what one answer that I got, and I've remained friends with this young fella from at least 10 years ago, maybe more than that now.
Wasn't he from Excel?
Yes, Bambi.
Yeah.
Adam Talmine, one of my great friends. I told you this years ago. I must have done. I forgot that I told you. But so everybody uses his lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! And this young fella, he says, "I think I'd be a little deer." I said, "What?" Yes, I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, I play tennis and I kind of prance around the court. I'd be a little deer." So I nicknamed him Bambi, and he's been Bambi ever since. And I've met with him. I've met with him ever since. And what's really interesting about that's kind of a fun story, but that resonated with me, and I spent a lot of time with that young man and helped him get his first job. I've mentored him and kept in touch with him. Now I can't do that for everybody. You can't do that for everybody because there's thousands of people out there. But there's those people that come along that something strikes you, and that's the complexity of human dynamics is what is it that unites people? Something that's usually something in common, but it doesn't have to be. It can be something that makes somebody a bit different. Now, this young fella was a bit different, and I was intrigued by his answer. So anyway, to ask you the same thing with you, CP.
Well, I'll answer it, but I think what you described was, and this is the important thing that you highlight in relationship equity is what's the connection? And the actually more you know something about someone, the more you actually feel connected.
100%.
And it's not something, hey, I got this raise or I got this promotion or I'm part of this company. It's tell me the worst day of your life. Open up.
Yeah.
Right. Let me see the human side. Let me see inside your soul.
Yeah. I just had a meeting with one of the VPs at York this morning, and the first question she asked me was, "How's your mother doing?" My mother's been sick. She's in the hospital, and she's back home now, and she's fine. And she said it again, back to it's not just what you say or what you ask; it's how it's said. She was genuinely curious. It was on her mind. We talked about it before, and she wanted to know, was she okay? And taking a personal interest in people, and a genuine personal interest, because people know if you're being disingenuous, they know that. So taking that personal interest in somebody is so important in true relationship equity development. The more you truly get to know somebody, and sometimes it's difficult to do that. A lot of people are not really open. But you have to judge the timing of it, of how many. You can't grill somebody, so you got to be. And understanding human dynamics, but if you take a true, genuine interest in people, then they usually take one in you. So, all that being said, what animal would you be, CP?
Well, it may line up to maybe me going back to work, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek. how about a 12-year-old golden retriever? Because everybody likes to come over and pet the old dog. You know what I mean? Lost a few steps, but he's still good at the core. You know what I mean?
Everybody loves the golden retriever, especially the old ones. You know, it's funny because back to the question of animals, when I was interviewing the ghostwriters for my book through Forbes, a wonderful slate of people. And I got to tell you, it was such an awkward thing for me to do. Who the hell am I to be interviewing ghostwriters at Forbes? It made me feel so uncomfortable. And I was, given some suggestions of questions to ask, and I think there's 5 of them, and they're all brilliant, brilliant people. But my brilliant daughter, who's also an author, a real author, she's done everything herself, Alison, she said, "Dad, let me give you the questions." I said, "Okay, here's 3. Don't ask any more. That's it." Okay. First one was the animal question. The second one was favorite movie. And the third one was, if you won $1 billion today, what would you do with it? Now, it's amazing the different answers, because I asked those questions of all 5 people. And of course, they weren't prepared for any of them because they were off the wall, crazy questions. Now, most people were in their office, 4 of them were in their offices, very accomplished, great resumes. And one fella was in his car and he was driving, and he had his cell phone for the conversation. He had a flat cap on. He was disheveled and he wasn't polished. And guess what?
You're like, there's my twin.
There's my guy. And you know what? This fella, I mean, I'll be lifelong friends with him. Bob Sheasley is his name. Wonderful, wonderful man. It resonated because every time we met over the screen, over Zoom, we both wore our flat caps. I've got 20 of them. I mean, I've worn flat caps since I was a little kid. And as a thank you to him, once the book was published, I sent him my favorite flat cap that he always complimented. It was mine. It wasn't new. It's old. But I sent it to him as a thank you because I knew that would mean more to him than buying him a new one. And so human dynamics are very, very complicated. They really are. And we typically resonate with people that are more like us. And when we would get on the screen and talk and chat about the book, we went on twice the amount of time we're supposed to, because we had such a good time and such a good laugh. It was a wonderful experience.
Let me leave one more with you. So Burt Reynolds, had his autobiography, and in the front of the autobiography, and I'll screw it up a little bit, we talked about kind of this actress or actor in Hollywood, and it was talking all about themselves. And at the end, they're like, "But enough about me. And oh, by the way, did you see my last movie?" I think, there is a certain part of the world that's wired that way. And luckily we have other people who are wired just the opposite, like you, that are more concerned about the other person than themselves. And to me, those are the most interesting people in the world.
I couldn't agree more with you. Now, having said that, I'm going to put a plug in that you aren't going to do for yourself, but I would ask my listeners to listen to your podcast, The Next Level Leader. There are a tremendous number of wonderful people on that podcast. I don't know why he invited me to be on it as well, but that is a definite must listen to for anybody that likes to listen to podcasts. Next Level Leader with Mr. Craig Pratt, my good friend CP. I cannot thank you enough for being on our little show today. We always have a fun chat, my friend. Thank you very much.
Sir Richard, thank you, sir. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. And that's it for this week's episode of Relationship Equity. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss out on future episodes. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.
This has been Relationship Equity. If you want to take your career, your business, or your personal relationships to the next level, reach out to Richard at yorksolutions.net. You can also get Richard's book, Relationship Equity, your cornerstone investment to great gains in business and life, on Amazon now. Relationship Equity with Richard Walker is a production of Forbes Books.